Winegarden. You know you have 5 minutes to make an opening address, followed by question rotations. Please begin now.
Thank you. 5 minutes, boy, it's really going to feel like a Rick Mercer rant, but here I go. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Mark Winegarden, and I drove down this morning from Wasaga Beach. My presence here today at this committee is a testament to the changing environment regarding public awareness of political activity in Ontario. I've never been involved in anything political in my life, but hydro has changed that. I was injured in line of duty in 2008 while working as a paramedic, and I'm now retired with lots of time on my hands. So Wasaga Beach is no different than any other city or town in Ontario, and the people in these communities are more and more feeling ignored by some of our political representatives. Approximately 1 year ago, I became involved with a group of people who are trying to prevent the sale of our local hydro distribution company. I'd like to share an observation regarding the actions of my new friends during the past year. It's all about the type of people who are getting involved. We have 60, 70, 80-year-old men and women who have never picked up a protest sign, have never phoned a friend about politics. They've never put a lawn sign on their front yard during an election. And these people are now standing on street corners, waving signs, walking through their neighborhoods, getting people to sign petitions, and attending meetings several times a week to try and influence the outcome of political decisions. The hydro situation in Ontario has, in my opinion, created a political awakening throughout the province. Yesterday, we had a large meeting in our new main auditorium where over 700 people attended and listened to 7 panel members who are all respected, knowledgeable people in the electrical sector. Some have spoken before this committee. The audience was filled with people like myself, people who have always been referred to as the great unwashed. One of the panel members commented that hydro in Ontario has become what language is in Quebec. The passion that exists in Ontario, this awakening that I mentioned, is caused by a consistent feeling of being ignored by people like myself. The people getting involved today are ordinary, common people who talk to their neighbors, who sit around the kitchen table talking about the problems of the day. If we hear about a neighbor who is refinancing their home and extending the period of their amortization, we feel bad for them. Out of respect, we may not mention it, but we'll use that example to try to teach our children to pay off their debt as early as they can in life. So when we see our provincial government doing the very things that make us uncomfortable at home, it makes us want to get involved. And we see our government selling off assets and we feel that we should continue to be run by the people of this province, it makes us want to get involved. When we see the government try to push any legislation through quickly without detailed consideration, we want to get involved. I'm not saying that in this case there hasn't been detailed consideration, but as the family sitting around the kitchen table when we hear about leaked reports and incomplete information, these concerns raise red flags in our homes as they should be in all of yours. Is Bill 132 being rushed through? Is there enough consideration being given? Years ago we would wait to hear about it in the newspaper. But today, we're in a different world. We hear about things daily through social media and internet news feeds that give us information the moment somebody decides to share it. So that kitchen table discussion I referred to earlier, it's shaped by the actions of the day, not the press releases that well-planned out communication specialists put together. The information we as the great unwashed receive now on a daily basis is raw, often unfiltered, and our reactions are exactly the same. We do not want our public utilities sold. It frustrates us that it will continue to happen regardless of our wishes. That alone is creating a changing tide of political awareness in the province of Ontario. In fact, it's happening throughout the world, but I would ask each member of our provincial government to think about all of the discussions happening around those various kitchen tables in their communities. Think about the information that's feeding those conversations, and then you'll understand the frustration that ordinary people like myself are experiencing. That frustration drives us to become involved. That's why I'm here today. Please listen to the people of Ontario. Rethink this legislation. We do not want our grandchildren paying for the mistakes we, the silent majority, have allowed our elected representatives to make in the past. We are here now. We want our voices to matter. Please rethink the entire hydro portfolio. Stop selling our prime assets. Take back our public utilities. Thank you. I think that was 3 seconds within the time limit.
6. Thank you. Mr. Tabbins of the NDP.
Yeah. Mr. Winegarden,
Yes.
first of all, thank you for taking the trip down here today. Not the best driving weather we've ever seen.
No.
Going to your remarks, would you say that a majority of your neighbors, friends in your community are opposed to the sale of Hydro One?
Absolutely, sir.
And they're worried about its impact on our hydro bills?
They're worried about the impact on their lives. The hydro bill is just one part of what we struggle with daily. So yes, and it's a very high percentage. Yeah.
The bill that's before us will reduce hydro rates for about 4 years, and then they'll start going up very sharply. And then we will be stuck with a repayment that's going to be very substantial for people in Ontario. Would you say again in your community that people understand that this is going to be very short-term gain for very long-term pain?
My father's 84 years old. His last hydro bill was only $7.98 because of some of the rebates and the things he's applied for. And he said, Mark, I can afford to pay my bills, but I'm worried about our grandchildren. And that was his comment. He's 84 years old, I think now, and he's worried about the future because of the short-term gain. That's what we talk about at the kitchen table. You know, the next election, we can buy whatever votes we want by implementing whatever legislation we want, but we have to pay for that for generations to come. And I think that's what's happening now, is that we're taking these things longer and longer into the future in order to make it more palatable today. And it's awful. We're talking about it everywhere.
And I don't know if you're aware of the Financial Accountability Officer's report yesterday. Did you have a chance?
No, I was pretty busy in Wasaga Beach. We had a large meeting going on there.
No, fair enough. He reports, he looks at this plan, notes the large debt hangover that we'll have from these 4 years of lower prices. But he also notes that there's some odd accounting in this whole thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that. If the government of Ontario borrowed the money to reduce hydro rates, just as they borrow money for all kinds of other things, we would be spending $4 billion less in interest than following the prescription that's enclosed in this bill. I'm assuming that people don't see the utility
30 seconds.
in being stuck with $4 billion more debt just to make the books look better.
No, in fact, the people that I'm discussing things with, they see the lack of information that's being fed to them as far as detailed reports as an insult to our ability to absorb that and consider it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Mr. Tabbins. Government side, Mr. Potts.
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Winegarden, for coming in, taking the drive in from Wasaga. I'm particularly interested in your comment about the conversation, because I think it's an important conversation that we can have, a conversation that has been pretty much ignored for the last 2 generations. And I noted in your comments you talked about don't make future generations pay for the mistakes of our past generations. I think it was clear to everybody in the messaging that we were hearing across Ontario that because of the investments in the infrastructure, bills were too high and immediate relief was necessary. So this is intended as a short-term relief program to get people back on a stable footing with then longer-term, middle and longer-term reliefs into fixing the system. So Mr. Tabbins is sort of speculating about what will happen 4 years from now and what the increase will be. If there are significant changes made in the infrastructure, the structural problems in the system, would that come as relief to you?
Well, no, I don't think it would, because more and more today, you have people sitting back looking at the entire picture, not just a particular aspect of what's being presented to us. And we all have mortgages. We pay them as fast as we can, or we stretch it out if we have other priorities. But we look at the whole picture. We don't just look at what makes it look good so that our spouse says, oh yeah, we can do that. I mean, we look at the entire picture when we're having our conversations in a community. And when we look at the entire picture, our biggest concern is the long-term ramifications. And when we hear things like, it's, you know, we're going to save money here, we're going to save money there, the first thing that most people think about is, where's that money coming from? What will be the long-term effect of that? And a lot of things that are happening right now, don't make sense to us. So if we hear that we're going to start this program, which will save either individuals or certain pockets of the population money, but then at the same time, we hear that this is being privatized and other people are going to make money, it doesn't add up to us.
And what's happening with
Wasaga Beach?
Wasaga Beach with respect to your local distribution company? Is
Our-
it currently
our,
who it is, and they're looking to amalgamate with the
No,
Hydro One?
what happened is our council asked our board of directors of our LDC to look at options, and one of the options that they're considering is to sell the local distribution company.
30 seconds.
And probably about 95% or more of our population are saying, no, don't do that, we want to retain.
And do you
it."
have, is there a lot of gas in your community to heat homes and such, which are privately held? And
Sure.
would it come as a surprise to you that most transmission companies and district utilities are already private in Ontario?
No surprise whatsoever, but we have one of the highest rated local distribution companies in Ontario.
Great.
We're profitable, and there's no
Thank you,
common
Mr.
sense
Tamas.
solution
BC
for it.
side, Mr. Jackowski.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Weingarten, for
Thank you.
joining us today and making that trip through the perfect driving conditions. You, Mr. Potts, talked about structural changes as if somehow they were contemplating them. We've been talking to them about structural changes since they brought the Green Energy Act in 2009, and nothing, essentially nothing's been done. They reworked the Samsung contract from being an absolutely brutally terrible contract to being just a terrible contract. So without change, there's nothing in this bill that makes any changes to the hydro system. All it does is take that amount of money that they're going to give to the people in the short term, essentially to get by the 2018 election, and make you pay later. But as you said, your father, I'm no different than you. My father and my mother, my parents wanted a better life for their children than they had. We want a better life for our children and grandchildren than we had. I've never contemplated leaving debt to my children or grandchildren, but that's exactly what this government is doing by their fudging the numbers and playing games, a shell game with financing the debt that they've run up because of their bad electricity decisions. And now at the 11th hour, they want to somehow tell you, look at the break you're getting on your hydro bills. After the election, according to the FAO and the Auditor General, your bills are going to go up substantially. Is that the way you would, if you were a CFO running a company, is that the way you do your business?
Well, sir, the biggest observation in regards to that is that you're right, that the kitchen table conversations I talked about, we do talk about our children, we talk about the future, and we talk about the CFOs and the presidents and so on, and what decisions should they be making for our children, okay? And the bottom line is, it's not after the election that we should be worried about, it's before the election. Because 2 years ago, and this is really important, 2 years ago, what I knew about hydro is I turned off and on the switch and I paid the bill when it came in the mail. And I paid it every month. Now I look at my bill. Now I listen to people like yourself. I listen to people like Mr. Potts. I listen to people like Mr. Tabbins. And I try and analyze it. And if it doesn't make sense, then for the first time in my 57 years on this planet, I get down to Queen's Park and I try and let my voice be heard. Never done this before, and there are thousands of people in my community who feel the same way. We have 20,000 people in Wasaga Beach. There's 3,900 lawn signs out there. We have 8,000 signatures trying to stop the privatization of our utility. That's a significant representation.
We
Thank you,
appreciate
Mr.
coming here
Jackowski, and thanks
making
to you,
your
Mr.
voice heard.
Weingarten, for